Welcome and good evening. This is the final webinar in our series, Sharing the Origins of the Educational Opportunity Program, linking the CSULB campus to the Long Beach community. I am Julie Bartolotto, the Executive Director of the Historical Society of Long Beach. Through historical collections, exhibitions, and programs, we connect people to the past and to the place they live. We strive to present an inclusive community narrative and help create a greater understanding of our neighborhoods, the city, and its place in the larger world. We have a packed program for you this evening, and I will turn it over to Erroll Parker, a veteran broadcast journalist and community activist. He earned a BA in journalism with a minor in Black Studies and political science at CSULB. As a former Black Student Union president at Cal State Long Beach, longtime community member, and current vice president of the African American Culture Center of Long Beach, Mr. Erroll Parker. Thank you, Erroll.
Hello and welcome, everyone. This is the final of 4 webinars on the origin of the Educational Opportunities Program at California State University, Long Beach, brought to you by the Black Student Union Elders Association. The BSUEA is composed primarily of retired CSULB African-American alumni who were mentees of Dr. Joseph L. White and his colleagues and former BSU members. The webinar series was inspired by the BSUEA collection entitled Legacy and Celebration and Remembrance, a stunning visual display of faculty and student activism during the mid-1960s into the early 1970s. We sincerely hope that you have enjoyed these webinars just as much as we have enjoyed bringing them to you. Today we give voice to some former students who knew Dr. White and one current student leader, and they are as follows. Ahmed Saphir, who has been a resident of Long Beach for 56 years. His extensive community involvement includes chairman of the Long Beach Community Improvement League, the off-campus committee chair of the BSU at CSULB, and president of the Long Beach Civil Service Commission. He is a business owner and a certified administrator of Orange Community Care, a Long Beach-based mental health residential facility. Mr. Saafir is also a developer and builder. Ayoola Fadonougbo, a Yoruba Nigerian biomedical engineer and pre-med student at California State University, Long Beach. He is the current president of the CSULB's BSU. He is a Ronald E. McNair Scholar and part of the Engineering Honors Program. Ayoola, where he teaches Black K-12 scholars in his IO Advice Program, gets into and excels at helps the students excel at their dreams to get at the university of their choice. He is also a Wave Fellow at the California Institute of Technology conducting gene therapy research. Alfred Jones is a master electrician by trade. He retired from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation after 25 years of service. The experienced technician taught the trade to inmates of Chino State Prison. He is a graduate of Long Beach Polytechnic High School and attended CSULB, where he was involved in the Black Student Union. Alfred is a longtime community activist and has spent extensive time with various community-based organizations, including the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party. He was actively involved in the development of the Poly High Interracial Committee. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
We're glad to have you here, especially for the young Ayoola. We are going to be discussing a series of questions about what happened in the past and what's going on in the future. The first question I'd like to pose upon you, and this is to Ahmed, we want to discuss the special relationship that you all had with Dr. White, and you are among a few people who had a special relationship with him. Would you describe your relationship with Dr. White, Ahmed?
Well, yeah, Dr. White was really the first pivot that you met when you came on campus through his recruiting efforts. I found him to be like a compass to help us find a real value of the individual, and they help us find our direction once we came to the campus, because it could be quite confusing. In fact, you could say it could be a jungle out there. But Dr. White was able to help us get both feet on the ground. I remember one experience where he took a group of us over to his home, which was unusual for a professor to take on that task. And we went and had a group discussion about varying topics. But I found him to be very personable. Maybe he was in between being young and being senior. And that made him have the capacity to relate to us as young people. I guess I was 23, and very comfortable speaking with him.
Now, Alfred, you had a relationship with him. He came to the community and recruited some of the people in Long Beach and Compton and in San Pedro personally. Can you describe the relationship you had with Dr. White?
Well, I got to know Dr. White on a personal level based on my perception of what the college was about. The college was foreign, alien, and it wasn't compassionate to Black students at the time at all. So it was a foreign thing, and how to navigate and make your way through that jungle. Now, I was already politically involved in the community per se. So I didn't think I was gonna fit in or fit it in. And he made me well aware that we all have different gifts, different abilities, and we all could be used in the fight. And it was clear that it was a fight for social justice. What we was coming, some of us was first generation. Others had been involved in a lot of community stuff, but the college student, that atmosphere with them young minds was the best atmosphere I could have been in, because some friends I made for life all came through that time. I grew up, matured as a man with this group of people. So that was outstanding. And then when we started flourishing in terms of activating young people in the community, we was able to talk to them. He talked through us to them, and got them involved. You can do this college thing, and we need your expertise to come back. That was the message that's been lost, but we need all those successful and people who gave their best to eventually come back to community and help build a community.
Well, Dr. White, Ahmed, was the father of Black psychology. And I saw you guys, I heard you guys say it was kind of a jungle trying to get acclimated to the campus. Now, being a psychologist and being the father of Black psychology, what kind of influence that he had? He probably understood us very well. We were the upcoming generation. In your private discussions with him, how did it come across to you that he was sensitive to what we were going to go through?
Well, you could tell he had given the subject thought, and it wasn't just knee-jerk or impulsive or reactionary, that he had examined some of the problems psychologically that new students had, and old students, because some of the old students got lost. But one of the most valuable things, I think, Dr. White, is showed us how to reach. And we needed guidance in terms of how to reach into the community, how to reach from within into the community and get involved. And that was a very valuable and necessary tool that we needed in our toolbox to be able to function on campus and off campus with the politics on both places. So I found it very rewarding in terms of being receptive to what he was giving and being able to feed it back.
And that's a very, very interesting point. And see, I thought, Alfred, that you were unique in that the BSU and Dr. White was reaching out to the Long Beach Black community. Now you were you're a native Long Beach person. And did you dream about coming to college, or were you just going to settle for City College or maybe getting a job? But tell us what your dreams was and the fact that you landed on that campus through the efforts of Dr. White.
Well, the fact that Dr. White, in terms of what the nation, our people, Black people, Long Beach itself was going through in terms of the resistance, the struggle at that time, because we've been in a struggle. Our life set is in struggle. So them elements, he was helping us. He knew what I'd say, psychologically what we was going through. I was young, and you think you can beat everything down. But you couldn't. You had to think your way. He gave you a path and an opportunity and encouragement to realize you could think your way and develop certain skills to get through the system. I was very lucky and developed mechanical, electrical skills, and as mastering that and going to higher levels, I never, I was, able to succeed and get through in life. If a Joe again, we young and work to master and develop ourselves, then, that picture. See, you bought property, you can get in the system and begin to work the system. So he encouraged all us to be the best you can be and use your natural gift. That when that he knew I was from the community and eventually be back or work at that level. So he never said you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. You just perfect your skills here. Learn other intelligent, sharp people. Learn to work with them. Be aware of them. Be aware of what you can do as a group.
Those are some very, very turbulent times, Ahmed. Once we get off this subject here on this first question, but those are some very, very turbulent times that young African Americans were going through. And then we saw the opportunity. We may not necessarily have the grades, but the education opportunity gave us an opportunity to be on campus. How did you feel when you were first notified that you would be a student? And you came from Long Beach City College, but quickly tell us, how did you feel when you were accepted at Cal State Long Beach through letter?
Well, I felt it was an achievement that it wasn't necessarily in my plans, but the powers that be had a bigger plan for me. So I think what happened is through Dr. White, it brings out the attributes in each student that enrolls, and they can begin to cultivate what's in them. And that's very important, or you won't stay on campus.
That's true, very
true. You won't stay a student if you don't find and someone help you bring out the attributes that you have within you.
So let's move on here. Now, the Black Student Union was formed in 1965. And in 1967, a young man by the name of Tony Wilkins became the president of the Black Student Union. And Ahmed, I wanted you to describe us what type of leader Tony was, and then what kind of relationship did he have with Dr. White? Tony was an outstanding leader, we know, but give us some, you and Alfred, give us some insight on the type of leader that Tony Wilkins was. First, you, Ahmed.
Well, I think what constituted Tony was he was very well read. And I remember him telling me that once he read Malcolm X, that woke up something in him that he didn't even know was there.
That's right.
He wasn't necessarily a public person. He was kind of a loner, but when he began to speak, he commanded the room. And I think that was his main ingredient that showed him to merge as a leader of us Black Student Union members. And he began to take form as such. He was a good brother. It took you a moment to understand him, but I was able to gather all my wits together to understand him and be able to work with him and not create a conflict. I think that's part of why we were all able to work with each other, is we seen a value in each other. And the main reason that we were involved to lift the African American up in its participation and community activism.
You know, Alfred, you came to the campus in 1967. That's when Tony hit the campus too. And you were at that time already the area captain of the Black Panther Party. Now we're going to get to Ayoola pretty soon, because what we like to explain from his perspective is their relationship that they had with the administration. But Alfred, tell us about your relationship with Tony, and then you guys hit the campus at the same time, and what type of leader do you think he was?
Well, you know, I think he was dedicated in a sense that he realized what struggle was going to be, what you have to give up to do this kind of community work. And the thing that Ahmed said was when we all begin to do the research, begin to dig for the truth and the facts, that discovery brought on a deeper level of friendship. Like with Dr. White mentoring and up there at the top, we had thinkers. Tony was a thinker. And the issues that we struggled with, that it made both of us, all of us strong. That the collective, as it's called, was like a think tank, brain trust, where we read, we studied, we questioned, we did the research. And when we got ready to, woke up in a sense of knowledgeable and deal with the public and other students, he was compassionate in that sense, because like we all realized, some people was first generation coming down to university, and chances of making it was going to be rough anyway. But the compassion you have to have as a leader, I think Tony has. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I like to mention, you know, there's a volume, the narrative on campus among Black students. You know, there always has to be, there can be a negative narrative or a positive. And I think Tony, Willie, and those kind of in the central committee made the narrative appealing and necessary for all of us students.
That's a great point.
You got to come together.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about the future. Tony provided some outstanding leadership along with the team of people that was on that campus. But Ayo, tell us about the current situation on campus. What's the relationship? You've been the president of the Black Student Union. Tony was the president of the Black Student Union. What's the relationship between the Black Student Union, the current Black Student Union, and the administration at the university in general, and your relationship with Dr. Connolly, who's the president in particular? Tell us about what the BSU's relationship is with the current university administration.
I would like to describe it first as I feel like it's best to describe it as a battle, right? As a battle with some allies, right? And our allies would be, like, say, the Black Faculty and Staff Association, different Black faculty and staff on campus, of course, Black students on campus as well, and even Black students on other campuses. Those are our allies. But then the non-Black administration, but some non-Black administration are also allies as well. But for the most part, the rest of the administration, it is like a battle against that, right? We are trying to make sure that we bring up the Black community on this campus, right, through organization, through efficiency and effectiveness, through leadership, through collaboration, through collectivism. But the culture on campus that is very much determined by how much the administration, gives power to students, and how the culture that they try to establish on campus makes it a little bit hard or us as the Black Student Union to organize and put things together. But nonetheless, we are doing what we need to do. We are collaborating with our Black faculty and staff. We are collaborating with our students. We are collaborating with students off campus and on campus, to be more specific. And yeah, I would just like to describe it as, a battle. And I feel like it's a battle that we are winning, that we are progressing in. And this battle, of course, I'm feeling like it's going to establish a point wherein administration doesn't become more so of an enemy that we are fighting against anymore.
But Ayo,
Mhm.
I have to say this.
Mhm.
When I go on that campus, and I'm sure Alfred and Ahmed will say the same thing, I see a noticeable absence of Black students on that campus. We fought hard to get more Black students on the campus, and it reached a crescendo at some point. But now we see a considerably and glaring less enrollment of Black students, as well as young African Americans.
Mhm.
In a couple of minutes, tell us what is being done about getting more African American students on campus.
And funded.
There are a couple of initiatives to make sure that we get more Black students on campus. I would like to address that. I would like to say that one of the reasons why there are less Black students on campus, after I've done my research on, the decline in the Black population in Black students starting from around 2005 to now, has been from the affirmative action, from the taking away and abolition of affirmative action that has caused a decline in the Black student population. But the initiatives that are being taken, to make sure that we get more Black students on campus are programs like the Black Beach Experience. The Black Beach Experience was started a couple of years ago, or to be more specific, a couple of years before the pandemic started, as a way to introduce Black high school students to the campus of Cal State Long Beach.
I'm going to give you a time that we're going to go in that in specific about. I want you to really explain that in detail later on in the program. But that is one of the strategies that you guys are having. Quickly, Alfred, when you go on that campus, you remember in 1967 in '68 we had a lot of Ayoola. We had a lot of African American students on the campus. Why is it that, and from your perspective, that has declined? Be quick on the question, please.
From my perspective,
I mean, I'm talking to Alfred right now.
Okay.
Well, I think at the time we had a more centralized purpose. Like, what does Black Studies stand for? What do it mean to Black students? What are the issues we're gathering around? What affect us all? And at that time, like I say, in the culture, in the community, we were striving for existence and acceptance. That flourish and follow through on campus. They didn't have programs reflected our interests. We begin to create them. We begin to talk to the administrator, challenge their position. How much money is being given to minority students to get guaranteed? What kind of apparatus we as Black students could put in place to guarantee our success? Dr. White was a brain trust. He kept you looking for ideas and ways to solve these problems, because nobody else, ain't nobody coming from off campus, and you alienated from the community when you go up to that campus and spend.
Okay, let's try to move on. And Ayoola, I want you to really explain about the Black experience, what you guys going to in the next couple of questions, because we really need to hear that.
Can I make one comment before we go?
Make it quick. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
Quick. Ayoola had just mentioned about affirmative action, that masterful plan when the folks that got behind affirmative action, when they seen enrollment increase, they came up with a plan, which was affirmative action. Conley got behind, and where you could no longer count the number of students by race. Cities adopted this also.
They won that in court.
Once,
that was a court issue. They won it.
Of course, that's why I said it was so masterful. And then enrollment began to decline because you couldn't even count who was in the campus population.
Okay, we want to revisit that because that's very, very significant. But let's talk about the relationship that Dr. White had with community leaders. Now, you two are already community leaders, Ahmed and Alfred. You are already, and I'd like us to discuss about the relationship that Dr. White had with community leaders. Ahmed, you were for many years with the Community Improvement League. Talk about what the league's role was, and Dr. White being instrumental, but the role of the Community Improvement League in terms of being a community link with the campus.
Well,
Ahmed.
yeah, you had a group of very mature young people in the Long Beach community who realized around the time of the Watts riot that they needed to have a place. And they made it, and they met in St. John's Baptist Church in the basement and organized, and then made a big step and bought 2222 Olive. And that began the community program. And then, of course, when I came in 67, 66, 67.
We remember well.
Well, I remember because that's when I got out of the Navy, and I was walking around the corner and heard this person inside teaching Black history, which was Dr. Harvey Williams, who was very astute in what he taught. And that's what drew me into the 2222 Olive.
And they had tutorial programs too, right, Ahmed?
Well, they had tutorial program, Project Friend, actually, where we took the children on trips to places beyond the corner liquor store. And it was the education department. And, you know, Richard Harris and et cetera were all involved in that. But it facilitated a place where the Black Student Union, where we could have our fundraisers upstairs at 2222 Olive. And,
okay, now Alfred, I'm going to name some names of people that I know you know, and say a little blurb about them. And I mean, you can intercede, and then we're going to move to Ayoola, talk about what you guys are doing in the Long Beach Black community right now. What are your plans? But I want to say first of all, Doris Topsy-Elvord, Alfred. Tell me about her.
Well,
Doris Topsy-Elvord.
I can't even speak that. Dorothy Top has history. She not only worked with Dr. White when he came to Long Beach, long before he showed up, she was involved in the Black community doing things, coming up from the probation department into the city, the Harbor Commission and so forth. That was one of those people that we had to make enough noise for them to hear us as young people, young activists. The same thing with Computer League. Once we was vocal and can pinpoint where we wanted, other people began to assist. She always had a thing where we could talk like Dr. White. She could help young people.
Tell us about Ernie Priestley.
well, Ernie Priestley was one of those founders of the Long Beach Community Improvement League, along with Evelyn Knight. Ms. Doris Topsy-Elvord wasn't involved in there. She was more involved in her career. So as a probation officer. So that kind of came later. But Ernie Priestley and Dr. White, see, those were what you would call the originals. Richard Harris, Dale Clinton. Those were folks that were involved in NAP long before we matured enough to get involved. And so you got the originals, the Alta Cooks, the Dale Clintons, the Richard Harris, Ernie Clark. Those people were the foundation. Zelma Lipscomb, Ms. Grigsby, those people were the beginning. Mr. McBride, they were the beginning. They're the ones that removed the roots in the community to make a way so we can make a positive impact with our work.
Alfred, John Callaway. Tell us about John Callaway, what his role was.
John Callaway, I forget the organization. Amir can probably help me with his name.
Yeah, they're Urban League. They're Urban League.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the community, doing community work. Young activists, I ran into them, educated, well-read, and we shared an outlook on how society and Black people's place in society. Everybody know the Urban League, what they're about. So, but he was a community actor, a brother in the community, doing the work of organizing, helping, and bettering Black people's lives.
Okay, let's switch reels a little bit. Ayoola, what are you guys trying to do in the Black community right now? What is your vision? What are you guys trying to do with the hooking up with the Long Beach Black community?
So what we are doing right now, currently, what we usually try to do every year, or more preferably every semester, given the capacity that we have right now, is do a community give back type event. So in the year before the pandemic happened, we had essentially a community event where we gave back to the houseless, right? We set up care kits with food, toiletries, feminine hygiene products, and much more. And we went into the Long Beach community to give back to the houseless. This past year, we set up a game night. So what we did with our game night, we did a game night / community event. So with the game night, we gathered people, we promoted the game night. So everybody came to the first floor of the University Student Union to play games. But in order to gain entry into the game night, you had to donate what? You had to donate some clothes. And we used these clothes to donate to organizations that we collaborated with to give back these clothes to those who are in need. Organizations like New Era Long Beach and Project Optimism. New Era Long Beach, of course, being an organization ran by one of our previous presidents, Isaiah Phillips. And other than that, even in previous years, we've had floetries wherein people, the floetry specifically was in conjunction with the Giving Back to the Houseless event, right? Making sure that we draw in our community members to build those organic relationships, to build that culture, but also use that as a means, as a foundation to give back to our community. So that's what we do when we work with the community. We give back to the community, give resources back, and we also collaborate with organizations who are well into the community.
Now, Alfred, you heard what this young man has said. What do you think about, from a theoretical standpoint, what they're trying to do from what you just heard? Alfred,
well, I hear from a theoretical point of view, but you got to come up with a fundraising base. You give me what you don't want, and I'll pass what you don't want on to somebody else. Community way and the needs are so much greater that we pass that. That's why I'm so glad y'all was working with some of the elders, because they know better. You got to have a fundraising base. You got to have the bodies, be in the community, do the work regularly. And most of that work, when you're community oriented, it has to be done in the community. Community don't usually come up to the campus, So,
Ahmed, what do you think about what this young man said in terms of the plans of the Black Student Union with the Black community?
I think it's a chore, and we can't. I want them to stay balanced. Stay balanced. I mean, in terms of what you do in the community and what you do on campus, because it's like people are volunteering, and now that Nike and all those ornaments have become so handy for students, it kind of disrupts their thinking in terms of being directly involved in the community. So that's where leadership comes in to help their minds cultivate an understanding, because the cultivation that goes on campus is what you want them to carry after they graduate. So you don't want to strip yourself of understanding and knowledge and insight into the community needs when you leave campus. So it's very important that this gets embedded while they're on campus and participating.
Okay, let's try to move on now here. And I hope you're soaking all that in, Ayoola, because these gentlemen are elders and they've been there and you're coming. And if we listen to one another, I think we can do a lot of good things. But I want to tap these old men's brains right here, Ayoola. Way back 50 years ago, and some of our memories are kind of bad, but the on-campus events that we hosted, Alfred, let's talk about what the BSU did on the on-campus events that we tried to institute. And Ahmed, you can chime in.
Well, the biggest thing was us trying to be self-sufficient and resourceful in terms of that. We had the dances. Everybody talk about those dances, how much fun and how fast dances got, but it was fundraising events. We used the Swappers House. We used different organizational who we collaborated with at names, because that was the only resource to get money for some of the shelter needs students had, book needs, transportation needs. And we printed, put out things, button, sent people to activities. You have to raise money. And like I say, you can have 300 students on campus and see 15 people, 20 people at the meeting. So
yeah, and part of that we have to understand is our legitimacy as a BSU, a student organization, had to be forged into the thinking of the larger campus, because the Associated Student Body didn't consider us a student organization in the beginning, so they wouldn't share any of their capital.
All new Afro-American studies. Remember, we started pushing for that because that we felt was our need. Right, yeah, we didn't recognize our value as a man and the Constitution. So I'm saying that's part of the struggle. Dr. White was so good in the psychology of what you have to do regardless. What is the conditions that exist that you're gonna have to fight or struggle under? And not that you're gonna overtake these things, but you got to work with many people like you that had common problems, Spanish, whoever it is, and begin to forge inroads into that university so you can come out and make better for the group to come from behind you, a better learning space where they can actually learn and feel good about the learning, because they're young high school students are indoctrinated already. They know their music, they know their culture, everything. They're pushing us out the way. They communicate much better. They on their phone. We was running off on the copy machine, the stereo machine. We was typing it
Mimeograph.
Mimeograph, I'm trying to say. So they're much more aware. We don't have to, they're indoctrinated. A lot of times we need to get out the way or help them forge a path to develop and challenge their ideas. But a lot of them, when we started, was no way it wouldn't exist. Like creative mind existed. Now you have a structure to go up under. But
now, before we go to talk about what's going on campus right now, Ahmed, would you like to add anything that Alfred was saying?
Well, I think what's important in adding on is that the enslaved people that used to be enslaved, waking them up. And remember now, when you come from way behind, as the turtle did, what happened was our momentum on campus woke up our brown brothers and sisters. And they got motivated and began to get organized when they seen the benefits of us organizing.
Okay, so let's talk about what's going on campus right now, Ayoola. What are you guys doing? What type of programs, what type of activities, what type of struggles are you going through? You heard what was happening 40, 50 years ago. What type of struggles are you going through right now on campus with your events and the culture on campus for African Americans?
One of the main struggles I would say is the lack of or let me not say lack, but more so deficient establishment of a Black culture on campus, right? Especially with the impact that COVID-19 had on campuses everywhere. So one of the struggles is building that back up, especially since Cal State Long Beach is known as a commuter campus. So whenever students come on campus, including Black students, they come to campus, go to class, and then leave, right? So it's we have to develop an incentive to make sure that our students stay, so that the culture builds up, and then we can continue progressing forward as Black people on campus.
Well, now that's really interesting. That's not, it sounds very similar to what we had to go through 50 years ago. It was mainly a community campus, but it's not as much as a community campus, Ayoola, as it was when we were there. Because there were some dorms, but I was on campus today, and I see some beautiful dormitories. And then there was the off-campus dormitories that a lot of things were going on. But it seems similar to the struggles that we were going through there. Alfred, looks like you want to say something.
Well, you got to remember, bro, there was no bus route from the community to the college neither. We packed in cars and did everything. It was an individual. You get your way there and you get your way back. Back in the time. So, and since I don't know a college that sits in a community that is a community college in terms of the community has full access to the SC and all like them. Look what they have. They're one of the hardest campuses to get on. And they come from all directions. But once again, the purpose and where they want to be in society. Why do they choose the expertise they choose? And is that something that's going to benefit us? Like you say, you got brothers want to be rappers and talk about a whole bunch of negative things. In the university, the think tanks, the knowledge bank, our new vision and value systems have to come in.
Ahmed, what do you remember about the on-campus activities when you were a student there?
Well, I was married with 5 children or 7 or something like that.
Don't make no
You don't know how many kids you had, Ahmed?
I had 5 when I was going.
5, okay, then.
I think I had a couple more after that. But, if we can, in terms of the present, because the consciousness in the community is a little bit different than it was back then. I think on campus, if we can get students to come out of there with some consciousness.
If you get students who can afford to go, it's going to help.
Well, yeah, but
How do we finance that education?
I want to speak about those that are in there. Getting students in there is a movement by itself.
And then retaining them. Once they get them there, then it's retention, Ayoola. It's getting students there and then getting them out, getting them retained.
Right.
It's recruitment and retention.
Well, we're also dealing with there's politics on the campus. I mean, this issue that came up today with the policeman profiling, as the professor said, they wouldn't unlock his door because they couldn't believe he was a professor. And he showed his ID and everything, but that wasn't enough. We can't open your door.
What's new about that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So history hasn't, it's just like the enrollment. I think I only brought it up before. The enrollment when we were there was 3.6, and it's still 3.6.4.
You did a graph on that, Ayoola, that you showed us that it went up. Explain the graph to us.
As I was saying before, with affirmative action, I was actually talking to, I believe I'm forgetting his title, but he works at Dominguez Hills, and I was discussing this topic with him when it comes to the graph, right? So in the 2000s, right, the early 2000s to around 2007, it was going up. And he explained to me that it was because of affirmative action. So affirmative action did make an impact, some type of impact on the percentage of the Black population on the campus. Yes, the funding as well. But afterwards, right, there was a sharp decline. It just dropped and then another drop, because after affirmative action was taken away, then that funding, that affirmative action did not allow for the continued increase of Black students on the campus of Cal State Long Beach and even other CSUs as well.
Funding.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next question here. I'd like us to talk about the off-campus activities during that time. And we have some photos of one, particularly some of these series of activities that took place at King Park. There were Malcolm X days, there were concerts there. In fact, we have a photo of Gil Scott-Heron and the Midnight Band that performed there. King Park, Alfred, was the center of the link, beside the Community Improvement League, the center of the link of activity.
We thought it was my
Americans at Cal State Long Beach, the students and the community. Explain that to us as we look at these photos.
Explain what now? I'm sorry.
Explain the activities at King Park in particular that link the community and the Black Student Union.
Well, King Park was a reflection and a coming together of a whole lot of ideas and concepts. The Malcolm X Day celebration that was being celebrated nationally and locally in Black communities elsewhere. And of course, the party was pushing that we begin to do those things in Long Beach. The grassroots people and the grassroots organizers got together and began to put those things together, work with people, work with them. On the campus had a large net because we was the soldiers bringing people together. We had to fight or push the administration to assist and help them. They opened doors, let us in places because we had numbers and we had the community here at the time.
Well, remember, Ahmed, we had the free breakfast programs at the Community Improvement League. As we look at some photos here of the concerts, but at King Park also we had the free lunch program on Saturdays, where we and that was patterned a lot after the Black Panther Party. We had those things at King Park where they served meals at the breakfast at the Community Improvement League, but the lunches and the concerts. We had the Community Improvement League and their staff coming and serving people in the community. As we look at some of those photos, what do you remember about the things at King Park, Ahmed, the concerts and things?
These are the type of ladies that you measure our success by. The parents that were coming, the people in the community that seen the work and it inspired them to want to get involved. I mean, even today, getting people involved is not easy with all the trinkets that are out there to distract us. So that's a measurement. That is a real measurement. I mean, we had ladies and fathers coming out and getting involved in the activity of feeding children, and no one looked upon that as negative. It was all a positive effort, and it was part of the movement, and it was part of the upward mobility of those children that were involved. And believe me, when you see them out in the community now, they have their own families. They remember us, even though we're gray. They still remember of the value we put in them.
Alfred, looks like you want to say something about that.
No, I have my own thoughts, but you have to remember the commitment to the work. Yeah. How many doors, how many flyers, how many times we see somebody say, be at King Park Saturday night, we're going to have, or whatever Saturday, then we're going to have a Malcolm X Day, we're going to this for everybody, we're going to cook for everybody. The cook showed up after we showed them it was a need and had to get it done. We created the circumstances to draw people in together. Then people found out we could do this.
Yeah. Okay, tell us about the beach community. I think that fits into what we're trying to say. What you guys doing? What's that concept of the beach community?
Are you referring to the Black Beach Experience or?
The Black Beach Experience. Okay, yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, the concept of the Black Beach Experience is essentially bringing out Black high schoolers to the Black Beach, right, California State University, Long Beach, so they can experience what life is like as a Black student on a collegiate campus, right? So essentially what happens is they come out for a day, they get food, they get lunch, they do workshops, they do seminars, and they listen to us speak to them. and they get to interact with us as well. We are also currently trying to expand it so that we have these students, sleep over in some of the Black students' dorms and actually go to the classes with students, right? Like a mentor-mentee type program. Considering our capacity right now, that may be a separate program led by our Black Student Union advisor, Dr. Keith Claybrook. But nonetheless, it is an initiative to make sure that we get Black high school students to experience what life is like as a Black student on college, to inspire them to come to California State University, Long Beach, and expand the Black Beach community.
Very, very good. Now, I want to switch reels a little bit here. If we have a photo of the Black House. Now, in the early 70s, the Black Student Union decided to leave campus and establish themselves in the Black community, and we rented a house there. Alfred, would you tell us if that was an intent to be a move to physically establish the Black Student Union, and a Black political collective was formed to have a physical presence in the Black community? Explain that.
Well, if I know what you're trying to say, we found out as Black students on that campus that we was an entity within ourselves. Like, you're there, you with other struggling students, and you're still trying to overcome something. We didn't have no place to teach and pass on knowledge and concept and explore ideas and read and study together on campus. Mm-hmm. And surely people in the community, once we went off to school or in college, didn't know what we did, what in college means. What that means, you're gonna be this, you're gonna be that. Black House was, and once again, we had students stayed there, because of course, they didn't know how to deal with their financial aid at the time, and financial aid so short. So we had students living there. So we had a residential versus a community center that we tried to do, where Black people could see us, we could tutor, we can deal with concepts. Hopefully, if any assistance to go or stay in college, we was fixing flats and doing everything else we could, the sisters' cars and whoever, but the community could see us. They could see us. We had regular men, like they keep talking about improvement, same thing, a place for us to be together and meet and deal with our philosophy and beliefs at the time.
That was exactly what I was trying to allude to, and you explained it very, very well. One of the things that we have not really discussed here, and I wish we had we were supposed to have a woman panelist here, but let's talk about the role of the African-American woman in the Black Student Union. We have some very powerful women, Laura Murphy, we have Cynthia Nash. Let's talk a little bit about those individuals and relationship that, and the influence and even the authority that women had in the Black Student Union. Would you like to speak to that, Ahmed? And also Ayoola, in terms of the women in the Black Student Union currently. But Ahmed, tell us about some of the women that were involved in the Black Student Union specifically when you were there.
Well, like you've already introduced how strong many of them were with their own knowledge base and their thoughts, and they had their own narrative in terms of their involvement. And that's when the whole philosophy that men and women, brothers and sisters, were equal. Mm-hmm. And that was a push in the struggle, and the Panther Party pushed that also. And that was part of the movement, whether you was Pan-Africanist or what. When you gathered yourself together, and the Black House became a catalyst for that equality, and I wanted to mention as off-campus committee chair, my job was to find a location that we could have in the community, and I scoured the neighborhood until the lady I found that owned that empty house gave it to us. We did not pay rent. She donated that to the Black Student Union. So let's keep that in mind, that our voice in the community was strong, so enough that she let us have a house that she could rent and get income from. but she gave it to the strong Black Student Union. And we used it for multiple of things.
I want to stay on that point of women. Ayoola, tell us about the women that represent the Black Student Union right now. Are they in leadership? Tell us more about the Black women that are involved in the current Black Student Union.
Yes, most definitely. So as you guys may, so currently right now, a majority of the population on the executive board are women, right? We have 7 women on the executive board, a very, very strong support from Black women on campus when it comes to the Black Student Union, when it comes to our general body meetings, when it comes to our events, when it comes to our executive board. Black women have a very, very strong presence when it comes to supporting the Black Student Union and supporting activism within the Black Beach community. And additionally, I would also like to add that we love to appreciate our women as well. Annually, we always try to have some type of appreciation event for our Black women, and this happens during Women's History Month. So previously, before the pandemic, we've had a Black Women's Appreciation Dinner, right? But this past year, with our reestablishment back in person after the pandemic, we had a Black Women's celebration general body meeting where we discussed influential Black women. Some of the Black men brought snacks to just to lighten up the mood, to bring up the celebration, to make it feel more homey, et cetera, et cetera. But nonetheless, we have a deep love and appreciation for a Black woman on our campus.
Now,
I don't know if you remember, but I was advocating to you old brothers here. I was advocating that brothers should go out and marry women that have children already, because those children need a daddy. I don't know if you want to remember that, but
you probably said that.
Additionally, I
don't quite remember that.
I would like to add,
like that.
but Alfred, we have a couple of minutes left. Alfred, we have a couple of minutes left.
The brother currently on campus, Ayoola. I'm sorry, I hope I got it right.
Yeah.
Has the BSU or any woman caucus in the BSU took a position on Roe v. Wade, which is the biggest issue in this current century that's going to affect Black women and women of all colors? And have they able to take a position and bring that to the attention of the organization, with the organization posture behind that decision?
Let him answer that. That's a really compelling. You want to respond to that, Ayoola?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you too well.
Have the BSU have a woman caucus of any kind group within the organization that has took a position on Roe v. Wade, the abortion issue? Has the BSU backed or stated a position on that? That affects all women in the country, and surely affects more Black women than anywhere.
Okay, go ahead and answer that question. We'll wrap up and then we'll get to the question and answer period. Go right ahead, Ayoola.
So we do have basically a women's caucus on our campus. It is currently inactive. We are looking for leaders to establish that women's caucus. It is called Queen to Queen, right? It's called Queen to Queen.
Say it again.
Queen to Queen. So it's Queen. It's spelled Queen, Queen. So Queen to Queen. And this is a safe space for Black women on our campus. Now, we haven't officially put out a statement when it comes to Roe v. Wade, but I have ensured that our executive board, we discussed it as an executive board when it comes to womanism, Roe v. Wade, and even in our past executive board meeting, we discussed how Roe v. Wade would affect Black women specifically when it comes to that change in governmental law. So that when we come back onto campus,
rights, that's all it is.
Yes, exactly. So that when we come back on campus, we are essentially prepared to handle any problem when it comes to Roe v. Wade or the taking away of reproductive rights when it comes to women, and especially Black women, considering how Black women will be more adversely affected by something like
that's why they should lead. That's why they step up and lead that, because they are affected.
Yeah,
I think that was an outstanding the question that you posed, Alfred. That was very, very good. Let's get into the question and answer period. If you have any questions, put it in the chat, and those questions will be relayed to us, and our audience will get a chance to participate. If you would put the questions in the chat. We have one question here. What were some of the major battles that the BSU and Black Studies had to overcome on campus? That's a very good question. I want to direct that question to Ahmed. What were some of the major battles that the BSU and Black Studies had to overcome on campus?
Well, to begin with, let's separate those two institutions. The Black Student Union, there was no Black Studies. The Black Student Union had to meet the challenge of establishing a Black Studies department. So now to establish a Black Studies department, we had to deal with department heads. We had to deal with the academic senate. We had to address them because their arcade thinking did not see a necessity for Black Studies. It was not part of the design of the campus. So
the curriculum.
The curriculum, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I'm saying, let me just say, we had to educate and create the need. The seed was so virgin, so new. We had to, we had, like say to Dr. Wright, we had to recognize ourselves that was a need. The campus, we had to bring that, we need this. This is how we facilitate, get involved. This is how we deal with this whole thing.
And why we needed it.
Right.
You
got to do that first. You don't expect them to be, it's like you say, well, if they ask for it, maybe we'll give it to them. But if they don't ask, they don't say nothing. Like
the movement there also was to try to split up the classes into other departments. And that was another battle that had to be won.
Oh, yes. Yeah. They wanted every department will deal with, a section. Every department will have a class. So you run around the campus trying to get your Black thing understood in your head, going from one building to another. I'm simplifying it. But that's why that was the challenge. That's why we had to go to the academic senate and put our foot down and hit the table and make them aware we're demanding that we have a Black Studies department.
The need was there.
That's right. We demanded.
It's all based on that. Like a man asks you what you want, you got to be able to tell what you want, what you need.
That's right.
Have done that
Ayoola, do you find it interesting as you see these guys talking about how the Black Studies department was formulated? Do you find that interesting?
I do find that interesting. I find that very interesting.
There had to be no fear. There was no fear when Alfred Jones with his big natural went in the academic senate, and we put our foot down. We demanded, and I don't want to miss that point. We demanded for change. There it is. Is that, that's what it. It's Dwight Herbert. That's one of our original brothers, Dwight Herbert, Tony Wilkins back there, Warren Alton. Yeah. Where's Linda? There she is, Linda Green.
Cynthia Nash.
And I was on the opposite side of the tables. I had pushed my way around there.
I see the shadow.
Yeah. I had, because the person, and this was all strategically laid out. The professor that was over the math department, he was one of our, what would you say, advocates for us not having Black Studies. So my job was to get around there and stand over his shoulder to give him a little perspiration so he'd understand, to help with his understanding. But I think we came out of there successful.
Okay, let's go to another question here. Did the move to the Black House come before or after the lunch programs and concerts in the park? Did the move to the Black House come before or after the lunch programs and concerts at the park? Can anybody answer that question? Did the
give brother,
move to the Black House
Ahmed an opportunity
come
to answer
before
that.
or after the lunch program?
Well,
I can answer it, but Jones, can
I
you
like
answer?
to ask what did it matter?
Well, I think from a historical purposes, somebody was probably asking that question. It came, the move to the Black House came
Simultaneously.
afterwards.
I'm gonna say it's just simultaneous.
Like I say, BSU, Black House, collective, you basically talking about the same brain trust, the same experiences, circumstances coming together and shit coming together and then blowing back out. Now our energy and have so much, we influenced other people to see our way, to see that it was a need, and they finally said, okay, you can have it. Now we just see what you're gonna do with it. And we begin to build the apparatus there to sustain ourselves. So they shut
Okay,
us down.
we have another question here. What has changed in the last 40 years of the BSU that has continued to move the culture forward? Let me repeat the question. What has changed in the last 40 years of the BSU that has continued to move the culture forward? What has changed in the last 40 years? Has anything changed to move the, you're currently, Ayoola is in the BSU, you're hearing some perspective. Can you see any similarities or changes or difference that existed 40 years ago from listening to these gentlemen?
I would say that the only difference is the magnitude, right? The magnitude and the capacity at which we perform the activities, because we formed the BSU on the same ideologies, right? We focus on ideologies of Black nationalism, of Pan-Africanism, of liberationist ideologies, right? And we move forward on those ideologies to gain liberation for our people on and off campus, right? Especially within the Long Beach community. And we do enact activities and events that are very similar to what you guys have done in the past. The only difference is the magnitude. We do have less people on campus, or more precisely, the percentages are the same, but the collectivism, the culture, and the essentially the collectivism, from what I've seen, it's just not as big of a magnitude as it was back then. But nonetheless, we do perform these similar events for the same purpose of, building up the culture, building up the Black Beach community for our liberation.
Very good. Okay, let's go to another question. And I want to direct this at Ahmed. How did the war in Vietnam affect the movement? How did the war in Vietnam affect the movement, in your opinion?
Well, I think a lot of momentum to be against the war. That's where you're talking about the free speech area, and people would be anti-Vietnam with Muhammad Ali making the ultimate sacrifice to give up his title. Well, we all know that history. That created a movement by itself that take another look at the war. And with Kent State, remember with Kent State, you had, I guess our movement had developed hippies, and then the hippies were against Vietnam. And we just inspired everybody. We inspired everybody to get active and look.
You better calm down.
and look at the contradictions. And look at the contradictions in the society. There were so many that people were blind until we kind of woke everyone up to look twice at how the government uses war, the whole war mechanism to
they took the same money they was feeding us with and used it to pay for a war. That's what
right.
woke us up.
And it was a fundraiser. Wars are fundraisers. Industry makes billions off of war, bullets, and so
now
get me started.
Before we get another question, we wait for another question. You guys mentioned the free speech area, and Ayoola, before I think it still exists. I don't know if they use it as a free speech area now, but in front of a bookstore, there was a free speech area, and the right in front of the bookstore, and students fought hard all around the country to have free speech area because the administrations around the country were trying to restrict that. But that was a area in front of the campus, Alfred, that you could say whatever you want to say. You could speak politically, and you could say what you, and it reminded me of when Eldridge Cleaver was supposed to come to the campus. But Alfred, talk about that free speech area in front of the bookstore. And then Ayoola, does that still exist? After Alfred talked about that, let's talk about it. Does that still exist? Alfred.
Well, it was nothing more than if you had something to say about campus life or what's going on, enough people, what was going on affecting you on campus or different outlooks or that affected you out in the world, that you can basically have a blow off that steam and allow to speak there. We had to we came up with issues that were so great and affecting us, but it was only speaking to us. They didn't want to let us speak to our needs. When they had outside speakers come, when we was later bringing outside speakers and so forth, in the Cleveland incident, we drew white folks from all over. Peace and Freedom Party, SDS, all the people came to hear. College campus was a thing for what they couldn't stagnate what you thought. You was allowed to think certain things and be able to express them. Because it was for young minds, developing minds. That's all college was. You couldn't say you can't
now, right there, you
this,
see John Callaway speaking at the free speech area. Ahmed, you and Alfred, speaking at he was invited to come up and speak. But there's another question here, and this question developed. I think Ayoola can answer this question. Today, does the BSU find collaboration with Latinos, Asians, Native Americans, queer, and women? Today, does the BSU find collaboration with Latinos, Asians, Native women, queer, and women?
I would say that we find collaboration specifically with the Latinx group, with the organization La Fuerza, formerly known as La Raza. And I'm actually quite very much in contact with their president. We talk every so often. We literally just talked last week. I was checking in on him and we discussing how we can move forward both as organizations to ensure our progression on campus, comes to pass. Not so much with Asians but we are not so much in collaboration with Asians and Native indigenous people. I would like to say the indigenous population of this land, but nonetheless, we support their ideologies when it comes to liberation and whatnot. But of course, we have to primarily focus on ourselves and collaborate and move as needed. With the LGBTQ plus community and with women, we primarily focus on the LGBTQ plus and community within the Black community and Black women, of course.
Okay, very good. And either one of you two gentlemen, what was the relationship that we had with the Latinos and Asians and Native people? Wasn't the LGBT community did not exist, at least above board during that time, but the Latinos, Ahmed, Asians, and Native Americans, and women, what kind of relationship did we have with those back in the day?
Well, like I alluded to, we woke everybody up. And once we woke everyone up, we were initially able to, once they got a hold of our coattail, then they began to get self-educated for their own movement. They realized that they have an interest that they needed to look at and protect. And once we did that, and now kind of everybody's in their own corner, hey, I work with everybody. It's all right. But, my interest, we have to have an interest. We have to have a self-interest because we will lose. I mean, we've got to be able to have discussions in-house about things that are affecting. For instance, all the commercials are diluting our community. and you see it in every commercial. So I think one thing the BSU needs to do currently is we need to develop think tanks and utilize some of the older guys that are on the screen, because we've really got to think and develop a picture that creates a progress.
I
That
would
creates
also,
real
Let me
progress.
ask
I'd
you,
also
Go ahead,
like to-
Alfred.
fundamentally, all minorities on a cabinet is fighting for the same money.
Right.
That's what put people at odds. As we decreased our numbers, they increased what they gave out. But when the Spanish influx with organization and community involvement begin to bring more numbers, that money split became more dire. And the battle, the common battle is get the administration to increase the minority recruitment, the minority funds, whatever they take for minority students. Cal State Riverside is going through the same thing right now. Your whole university system in terms of what they put out for minority students. The big increase in money went to athletes. That's where all the money went. Athletes was taking minorities slots in a school.
Okay,
Yes.
let's move on to another question. To the elders, did you have elders mentoring you as you made demands and navigated through the struggle during your time at Cal State Long Beach? To the elders, did you have elders mentoring you as you made demands and navigated through the struggle during your time at CSULB? Ahmed.
Yes, I think Dale Clinton, the Richard Harrises, the Ernie Clarks, Alta Cook, Ms. Lipscomb, Ms. Grigsby, those were the people, as I said, those were the ones that dug up the roots to help us. They gave us guidance. They didn't directly hands-on, but they provided a maturity. And John Callaway, I mean, he was at the Urban League and he gave something to us that gave us the inertia to move forward and want to be involved more in the community. I mean, it took that to wake you up, your consciousness. It took that. It took some thinkers. And these were thinkers, and they were fighters. No use me abbreviating it. They were fighters until the city hired them. And then
Now, what is the Divine Nine? There's a question, the Divine Nine. What is that? Can anybody answer that question for me?
Yes, the female, the women's sorority, the Greek empire on campus. And one
Yeah.
thing about them, all lay members, black, white, well, black, all have a high GPA. You can't stay and function in those sororities or fraternities without a certain GPA, being better. All of them graduating men. So what I'm saying, from the beginning to the finish line, what helped black students, or where is the need? The support apparatus is so funny because they support their members, sorority, sisterhood, brotherhood. That's what they do.
Okay, Ayoola, what is the BSU agenda for the coming year? Tell us briefly what the BSU agenda is for the coming year.
So the BSU agenda, we have a lot of things planned for the upcoming year, especially after I've taken in a lot of wisdom throughout my first year as the president of the Black Student Union this past academic school year. I have or more so, we have a whole layout of what we are planning for when it comes to the next academic year. One thing that we are planning for is the Black Consciousness Conference, which is a 3-day conference to politically, socially, and economically educate our people. Other than that, we are planning our general body meetings. Our general body meetings are what serves as think tanks, to use the terminology that Ahmed was using. Other than that, we have our study jams, and we also have community events that we are planning to make sure that we give back to the community. Additionally, we have in store the Black Beach Experience. We have in store Flowetry. We have in store the event that we have before we even start the year to make sure we build a culture, we build a collective before the year even starts, which is the Black Beach Experience. And additionally, we also have some other political things that we are planning that I do not want to, say too much about, just because we want to keep it on the low so we can do it as efficiently and effectively as possible. But other than that, we just have a lot of political consciousness. We have a lot of community building efforts coming up, and yeah, we just have a lot in store. We are
Okay,
a lot
very, very good. The last question here is, this generation seems to have a lot more distractions. What do you think will impress the importance of uniting and focusing on the erosion of our rights? Let me repeat that again. This generation seems to have a lot more distractions. What do you think will impress the importance of uniting and focusing on the erosion of our rights? I would like Ayoola to speak to that, then Alfred, and then Ahmed, and then that'll be closing us out.
I was actually thinking about this for the past couple of weeks. One, I would say, is working, right? And economic funding, making sure our students are well suited economically and financially so they can focus on their studies and so they can focus on their activism. Because if our students have to work full-time jobs or even just part-time jobs while they're doing school, what time do they have to focus on activism? So we need our students to be economically secure when they enter university so that they can focus on the things that they need to focus on rather than making money and just plain old surviving. Another thing I would say is even if you are working, just making sure that we have a proper work-life balance and lowering how much lowering the hours of work that we have to do for efficiency and effectiveness, right? Because studies have shown that lowering the workday from 8 hours to 6 hours and maybe even 4 hours increases productivity, increases energy, all of that stuff to make sure that we can focus on the things that we want to focus on, namely the erosion, uniting and the erosion of our rights. So being economically established and making sure we have the time to do what we need to do and focus on what we need to focus on.
Very good. Alfred, the generation seems to have a lot more distraction. What do you think will impress the importance of uniting and focusing on the erosion of our rights?
Common good, common need, unify around principles, issues, relationship to dollars and cents in terms of what a dollar is worth an hour. You got to look what it takes to house, feed, and clothe. Most college students are all in debt, all student loans. Look how large they are. People, after they leave college, they can't afford to buy houses, cars, and do other social things based on debt load from college. You got to balance, is it worth versed on what I put in, versed on what I get out. Black people can't carry no more debt load.
Okay, all right. Ahmed, you'll have the last say before we close. This generation seems to have a lot more distractions. What do you think will impress the importance of uniting and focusing on the erosion of our rights? You'll have the last word.
Our rights are being eroded because lack of political education. We must teach our people that voting is important, that also being aware of what's going on in society and be able to talk about the subjects we don't want to talk about. There's so many subjects that are ignored. Like he was talking about abortion, and should we talk about whether you ought to own a gun or not? Need to have the conversation. Do you buy a Bentley rather than a Honda? I mean, we got to get into our economics of the value of the dollar.
It has to come together on any decision.
Of course.
You make the money, you spend it like you want.
Well, you know, we need education in economics too. I know a dozen PhDs, but they're all EDDs. You know, they only have the ED. They only have the ED so they can get a higher pay at the job. But if you look at the pie, the engineers are like 20%. We need folks going into engineering, medicine, astrophysics.
How do we maintain our community?
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, everyone, for your time. We have to close out now. This was a very rigorous discussion of the past, present, and the future. I want to thank all you gentlemen for your participation. I'd like to close now. And in closing, I would like to remind you that the BSUEA collection, Legacy, Celebration, and Remembrance, will be on exhibit at the Historical Society of Long Beach during Black History Month in February of 2023. The collection further illuminate this little-known history and usher visitors on a journey back in time by way of photos, documents, and a chronology of events. BSUEA continues to work on establishing a collection location for collected materials, photos, and research documents, and create a website where documents can be stored and accessed by students, community residents, and scholars. Recordings of all 4 webinars will soon be available on the hslb.org website. We want to thank Julie Bartolo and Bianca Marino, the entire staff of the Long Beach Historical Society, for co-hosting this outstanding series of webinars with the Black Student Union Elders Association. We want to thank BSUEA members, Willie Elston, Cecily Harris-Walters, Lawrence Fortenberry for working so tirelessly on this very important project. We want to thank the moderators and the panelists who did such an outstanding job. Also, you, the viewers, for watching these important historical webinar series. But mostly, we want to thank the late Dr. Joe White for his contributions to the study of Black psychology and the creation of an Educational Opportunity Program, EOP. Since its inception in the fall of 1967 at Cal State University Long Beach, EOP has enabled countless low-income, first-generation students of color access to higher education. Now, before we close, let's view a brief video clip in which some of the very same community leaders mentioned in tonight's webinar gathered in 2016 to say thank you to Dr. White. Good night, and thank you for joining us on this amazing conversation and history lesson. This is Erroll Parker. Good night.
To the camera. Boss, there you go.